Okay, so let's go ahead with the isopropanol precipitation first. What we're going to do is we have each one of the isolates, the phase, whoops, that's the wrong tube, here's the right one. And we are going to go ahead and add 2 of these glass beads, really relatively large glass beads. And this is, we'll probably show some diagram of it, but essentially the goal here is for these really large glass beads, 2 of them per sample, you are going to precipitate the DNA and essentially get the DNA to wrap around those glass beads. Then when you pour these off into this contraption here with the bead retainer, the beads will stay behind with DNA bound to it, and you watch them. So it's like a macroscopic version of what would happen if this was a silica column, certainly inspired by that. So this is, I don't know if it's like a bit of a game operation, if you know that, just to get those beads into the tubes here. And I've got a pair of forceps, so I'm going to go ahead and add 2 capture beads and see if I can do that without making a big mess or wasting them. Oh, there goes that one. Try to be a bit more careful. That was fine. That was fine. You could certainly put these into something like, I don't know, a very small weigh boat or even some paper. Have a better chance of not wasting, I assume, I hope. They give you an extra 1 or 2. All right, so I've added that. That wasn't too bad. And I am just going to visually verify that I see 2 beads in each one. Okay, excellent. And I'm going to go ahead and add straight up isopropanol to each one, 550 microliters. This is, because it's been sitting on ice, it's a little bit cold. I don't know that that's particularly necessary. I don't think it's completely undesirable. But here we are hoping to go ahead and get high molecular weight DNA, perhaps even visibly. That would be great if we see some wisps of that DNA. And this says mix on a vertical rotating mixer for 10 RPM for 5 minutes, which I don't have. I'll be using my hands and doing this for about 5 minutes. So I'm gently rocking, and I am seeing, as I do this, visible threads of what looks to me like potentially DNA, so that looks very promising. Something is coming out of solution. So I'll keep doing this for about 5 minutes with the hope that we are getting what we're looking for. And I'll manage to get a close-up of this just for anybody who wants to see. Okay, so I have done the inversion, and also we've got the clearly visible, what looks like hopefully some DNA. Now the next step is actually to remove some of that supernatant. What you'll have noticed is even after the inversions, it's not like the DNA is tightly bound to the glass beads, but it's starting to stick, and the next washes will help it stick. And it gives the advice, as you are removing the supernatant here, to sort of put the pipette tip at the bottom and essentially try to avoid sucking off that DNA because it's not quite 100% bound. So I'm sucking out quite a bit of this supernatant and getting rid of it. But I am tilting things in such a way that I am avoiding however I have to move the pipette, and visually just make sure that I am not sucking up that supernatant. And I'll try to get rid of as much of it as I can by being careful about tilting and moving and whatever I can do. I may not, you know, totally, certainly not doing it in one shot. And also I just may not get it all almost no matter what I do, but that's okay. I'd rather not get it all and then add the wash buffer, which is going to help it bind better. So I'll get multiple chances. Tilting helps. Going not too quickly helps. And there's some nice diagrams in the actual protocol that help you as well, just reinforce what I'm trying to do. And, you know, if this is my second day pipetting, some of these steps might be a little bit onerous, but I actually think I feel quite comfortable with a high school student being able to do this. All right, so we're going to go ahead and add this buffer. It mentions, we're going to do this wash twice, and it mentions just to be careful as you are doing this, not to let the beads dry out. So we're going to go ahead and add 500 and then pipette away. It says here we can decant a bit, use the pipette tip to make sure that nothing falls out. And, you know, as we add this, we're probably going to losing some of the residual viscosity. This is the wash buffer, and if it's the first time using it, you do need to add ethanol. So make sure that you've reviewed the directions, and in this case, you know, label the bottle just to make it clear that ethanol has been added to the wash buffer. So we've added this, and then we're going to invert it 2 or 3 times, and it states that the beads should stick even a bit more, the DNA to the glass beads. And I'll come around to get a close-up. I mean, this looks, I've done 2 inversions, and it's really sticking to those beads there. So that's pretty clear what's happening. All right, now I'm going to try their solution of decanting, and on the second wash I'll do a close-up just so you could see. It's really quite obvious when you see it by eye. So this is the step where, you know, there is some ethanol. Going to change tips. Cross-contamination hazard. There is a fair amount of liquid, but you do want to work fairly quickly so that, you know, if I had lots of samples, I wouldn't want to leave this open for too long and potentially dry things out. If you've done this a while, you realize that once things dry out on glass beads, DNA, you may never get it to elute off. So, okay. And I'm going to add another dose of that wash buffer, but also get a close-up because you can really see just a bolus of high molecular weight DNA attached to those beads. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the beads into their setup with the retainer. First, we can get rid of that residual ethanol and then sort of slide the beads into there and kind of use that decant method. Get rid of most of it and then slide them. Okay, visibly, you know, nothing has remained behind, so that should be good. The other thing is to cap this immediately, because again, as we're going into there not being all that much liquid in the system, there's a chance that as the ethanol dries out, you are, I think I changed the tips, but I'm never gonna worry about an extra one. As the ethanol dries out, you run the risk of drying out the DNA on the beads, which is probably irrecoverable. Okay, so that we give a very quick pulse spin just to try to get rid of a drop of ethanol. So not very long, but enough to do that. We want the DNA to stick to those beads. That was actually too much, but I pressed the wrong thing instead of pulse. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we are going to put the beads into a newly labeled Monarch tube. So these are the 2 ml tubes, quite large. And we also need a set of, we're gonna hold on to the bead retainer because we're gonna use that again. So I've labeled these separate 1.5 ml tubes. These happen to be low bind tubes, optional, but theoretically can consume less DNA. So we don't need that again, but this, we're gonna put the beads in. And I am gonna get a thing so I can tap this because I spun it down quite a bit. You could see they hardly didn't want to come out there, but they did. I'm gonna close that immediately. That was me spinning it down too long. It says 1 second. It's a little bit more than 1 second. Oh well. No ethanol. This one was far less stuck. Okay, that was better. I'm gonna cap it. I don't want that to dry out. So this part you definitely wanna move quickly. I'm trying to. Now I've got the beads off, but there is clearly a visible hunk of DNA, so I'm going to use this. It's a bit snotty. Going to use this pipette tip. Get that little chunk of snot. Now, in my haste, I think I lost a bead retainer there, so I'll grab another one. But pretty quickly, what I want to do now is add a elution buffer, 100 microliters, because we don't want that stuff to dry out. And what I'm actually doing, you have to dig a little deep into the protocol. I have what they call elution buffer plus. And what is elution buffer plus? It is the elution buffer, but we have added the tiniest bit of Triton detergent to this. I think it's like 0.002, something like that. But read the protocol. We'll have notes, and I suppose that helps with solubilizing all of this. It's actually quite difficult to get high molecular weight DNA back into solution. So actually, what is going to come after this step is a bit of an incubation, a couple of incubations to get everything back into solution. Okay, that was as immediate as I could make it. Maybe I could have done better, but hopefully I've done well enough. I've added that, and the goal here certainly is to make sure that is completely, that chunk of DNA there is in the elution solution. And this is going to go back at 56 for about 5 minutes with some shaking. So you're going to come back here and do a little bit more of, tapping and shaking. In the meantime, after this incubation, we're going to then get rid of the beads by pouring them off. That's why we keep, or except for the one that I missed, that bead retainer into the final. So we'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay, so that has been sitting. In fact, I should take it out at 56 degrees for about 5 minutes. And what we're going to do now is pour these into the final DNA tube. This is one of those Lupine tubes with the retainer. The DNA is by no means solubilized for 5 minutes at 56, but we are going to put it in solution, get rid of the beads, and then continue that solubilization process. So it really is pouring it off. And so we're going to pour it in. The beads. Now, this is interesting because this one has and it's not uncommon. It almost, when you're dealing with this high molecular weight DNA, there's almost like I'll call it a jelly. In fact, actually, this is the moment, again, to transition to wide bore tubes. So I'm going to quickly do that because that jelly is valuable DNA, potentially. And it can be very difficult to get back into the solution, but we're going to get as much of it as we can. The hope is that it kind of, now it really looks like snot, but that you try to get it on the beads. So just be mindful to be observant here. Let's try that again. I'm going to have a pipette tip ready in case decanting doesn't fully dislodge everything. That was 19. I'm going to actually this time shake it up a little bit before I pour it off, and that might help make sure that everything comes out in the decant. Okay. Gonna check to see if there's any. This time I think it was more successful. And a final time. I'll have this just in case. At this point, the pipetting and everything, you're trying to keep it gentle because you don't want too much sharing. Theory, we did some sharing earlier. Okay. Okay. I think that was a necessary step, although here, yep, we got some jelly. Didn't quite dislodge. Now this time, we are gonna spin it down with some force and time, about 30 seconds, I believe. So I'm gonna immediately cap that. And it suggests that we can do this for 30 seconds. This time we really want the all of that DNA to get to the bottom, and we don't need the beads anymore. And it suggests again that we break it up, what's at the bottom, with a wide bore. So I'm going to, each time I have this, just try to break that up. So really everything has come out except the beads. Okay, they get really retained, which is the function. I'm gonna give some quick. It looks pretty evenly dispersed. There's some air bubbles, but it's clearly viscous. But I love high molecular weight DNA, that's great. We want to kind of be evenly dispersed. We don't want that just sitting in a, almost like at the beginning of a pellet at the bottom. Okay. And the last one. Looks very good. This one is clearly viscous. In fact, some of it is trying to stay on the inside of the pipette tip, but I think I've gotten it. Okay. All right. So that's really the end of the DNA prep. This is going to go. So my kind of ideal would be to do this overnight at 4 degrees. I'm sorry, 20. You could do it one day. It says here. Let me just read it before I mess it up. 24 hours at 4 degrees, but you can also, as I'm going to do, 30, an hour at 37. It could be difficult to get this stuff back into solution, and also if it's not fully mixed in solution, then literally where you pipette to do a qubit analysis, which we will do to get the concentration, that'll be way off. So we are going to go ahead and do that, and we can store this at 4 degrees for weeks according to the protocol, or for longer term at -20, so the buffer is good for that. So into the 37, and that concludes the protocol for obtaining high molecular weight DNA from bacterial isolates. I guess I'm calling it something different to actually verify that the protocol worked with qubit, and that'll be the next thing I do before we move on to library preparation with Nanopore. All right.